Welcome to eDiscovery Leaders Live, where I get a chance to chat with luminaries in eDiscovery and related areas. This broadcast is sponsored by Reveal Brainspace, the industry's leading AI eDiscovery platform. Don't forget to subscribe to watch me, George Socha, weekly with leaders in eDiscovery. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome to eDiscovery Leaders Live, hosted by ACEDS and sponsored by Reveal. I am George Socha, Senior Vice President of Brand Awareness at Reveal. Typically, each Friday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern, I host an episode of eDiscovery Leaders Live, where I get the chance to chat with luminaries in eDiscovery and related areas. This week is not typical. This is, I think, the second of our Asia Pacific series, being aired at a time more friendly to our friends in Australia than our typical Friday morning time. In any event, past episodes are available on the Reveal website. Go to revealdata.com, select resources, then select eDiscovery Leaders Live. Our guest today is Grant Whiteley. Grant is a partner at Cordamentha. He is consultative and approachable style, as you will see, combined with his versatility and dedication to achieving a positive business outcome, has helped clients through stressful times, as if there's any other type of time with eDiscovery, I think. Grant specializes in dealing with assignments involving technology-based issues. He's got over 14 years of investigative experience. His background includes 8 years with the Western Australia Police, with deployments including ones where he was attached to the Computer Crimes Squad and the Internal Affairs Unit. After he left law enforcement, he worked within the forensics and integrity team at a Big Four accounting firm before joining Cordamentha. Most recently, Grant has been leading Cordamentha's eDiscovery team and has been assisting their clients in responding to royal commissions, public inquiries, and regulatory notices. His experience and his passion for technology allow him to break down complex technical issues into simple, non-technical advice. He has prepared written expert reports, and by the way, that breaking down is essential for those expert reports to be effective. He has prepared written expert reports for many cases in the Perth Magistrate, District, and Supreme Courts, and has previously been accepted as an expert witness. Grant, welcome.
Hi, George. Thanks for having me.
So glad to have you here. So I talked a little bit about Grant. Is there anything more about Grant we should talk about?
Well, I guess you covered a lot of it, but yeah, I'm passionate about technology, and particularly in the eDiscovery world. Once I started down this path, I found it hard to get out of. So really excited with the recent innovations in machine learning and AI, and see that's definitely where my future is.
And Cordamentha, you've been there for how long now?
Been there for just over 10 years. And Cordamentha has changed a lot in that 10 years. We started a forensic team first in 2008, added a forensic technology and eDiscovery function shortly thereafter. And our forensic technology team has just continued to grow. And, we're one of the growth opportunities for Cordamentha going forward. So it's really great to be here where we are now.
Is your team focused exclusively on Australia, or do you reach more broadly than that?
We focus in Asia Pacific. So we have offices in Singapore and Indonesia, and throughout Australia. So we service various clients in Asia Pac from those offices, and we're very mobile, moving around where we need to be.
That has to, I would think, pose some special challenges, because it means, of course, you're crossing national borders all the time in order to get the work done, as well as crossing cultural borders. Anything particular about that that's either challenging or has given you the opportunity to improve what you do?
Definitely challenging, especially in the current climate. Dealing with data sovereignty and geopolitical issues is those issues are only increasing. We obviously have the challenge of frequently having to deal with non-English based languages. So lots of CYJK languages and also having to do a lot of audio and text translation.
You mentioned just briefly that you do some work with AI models. Could you expand on that?
I think that's the probably area where we see a lot of opportunity, and we're trying to be out front of the pack. So where we were probably an early adopter of TAR when it first sort of emerged, and we're proponents of pushing that for our clients in Australia. Since then, we've done a lot of exploration around using sentiment analysis. We've developed our own tools. We've also looked at ways that we could break down complex AI models to help clients understand them. A lot of the tools we've been using in the past had less than ideal reporting metrics. So we've really taken efforts to really understand how we can break that down to help a client understand how their project is going. And more recently, we've been looking at using AI models for non-discovery related matters, how we can help both our internal clients and our external clients to leverage that for a given scenario. And particularly very interested at the moment with the transferable data models and layering of data models.
Let's break that down into pieces and see how many pieces I remember to get back to. And let's start with TAR and your early experiences with TAR, what has worked, what hasn't worked, and why.
Early experiences with TAR were very TAR1 sample-based learning. And I guess, first dealing with that, we had some issues really trying to understand how we could make sure that consistent coding choices were propagated across all the documents, and really struggling initially to understand how we could measure that or report on where there were issues in consistent coding. And then particularly around trying to maintain algorithm health, so we could track how we thought the algorithm was going, rather than just waiting till we got to an endpoint and trying to look at specific metrics to see if it met those metrics. So that was really a challenge initially. At least now with TAR2 and continuous active learning, we've built a lot more robust sort of management practices into our workflow, so we can now report on that, and we see a lot more certainty, at least in the initial and partway through the project, so we know we're on the right track before we've spent a lot of time investing and doing reviewing without really knowing where we're going to land. And more so now with, I guess, TAR2 and the continuous active learning, getting more into that richness understanding, trying to work out from your data set exactly what the likelihood of success is going to be for that project.
Does there continue to be a viable role for TAR1, at least in your practice, or has everything moved over to CAL or TAR2, which I assume are essentially one and the same?
Yes, our default position is to always deploy TAR2, but we do see that there is a use case, not as frequently, but there are use cases for TAR1, depending on what the objective of the scenario is. So we use, in our practice, our biggest client is actually KordaMentor ourselves. We do a lot of work for our investigations and our insolvency colleagues, and we deploy TAR2 on every single job. And that is really from a prioritized perspective, from a quality control perspective, or just as a backup measure. So we use that every single project that we have, with with tar one, we don't use that often, but when we do, it's really around trying to establish a workflow that involves a round-based workflow, and we have built some Power BI dashboards that help us track that project, and it's kind of the way we deploy it is kind of like a tar 1.5.
Okay. Next, we're going to be going to tar 1.5.5. Are all your clients as willing to make use of tar as your own organization as a client is?
In the most part, yes. We're surprised, or I've been surprised, in Australia, the uptake on tar has been good. It's been really well received, especially there's no question when we have a project and we talk about using tar. Everyone's keen to use it on their project. They see the benefits of it. They recognise the value that it adds. Where I've been surprised is more on the international stage when I'm dealing with clients from the UK, for instance. They're less likely to use tar, which has always surprised me given the size of their market. I thought they would be much further along the adoption line than we were, but doesn't seem to be the case.
I would like to be able to say that here in the US, we are as far along the adoption line as you are, but I think the truth is we are nowhere close to as far along as you are. There's still a lot of resistance or lack of interest. What have you done differently?
I think in Australia, at least with the clients we work in, the matters that I'm involved in, there really is a desire for the most efficient process possible, and that is generally for both parties involved in the dispute. They're advocates of the court, so they're ideally trying to get to the resolution as quickly as possible in the most commercial way for their clients, and widely recognise that tar is the best way to get there. That's not to say that when tar is used that there's not some subsequent challenges to the workflow or questions about how it got there or the costs associated with it, but there's not really any obstacles into deploying tar because most parties just recognise that it's cheaper to use it, and they probably don't have the resources to do the project without tar.
This suggests to me a fairly fundamental underlying difference between your legal system and the various systems we have here in the US, the federal and the state systems, which are for these purposes essentially the same. We have, from the sounds of it, much more gamesmanship going on, much more weaponizing, if you will, of electronic discovery and of tar. And a significant number of people who, along those lines, hope to use it to drive, or fights over it to drive up the cost of the other side. It sounds as if that's not how things operate in Australia.
I mean, that definitely occurs, but it's probably more of a rare occurrence than a common occurrence. And where it does occur, I think it, the parties trying to deploy that method need to be careful because if a judge recognises that that's the approach they're taking, he or she may not look favorably on, their approach, and there could be some outcomes out of that don't fall for them favorably.
Moving from tar into the use of other forms of AI. One of them you mentioned, sentiment analysis. Tell us a little more about what you do with that.
We've been exploring sentiment analysis for about 5 or 6 years, and we had built our own tools to use sentiment analysis, but quickly tools such as Reveal are much more advanced than us. We don't have our own data scientists, and we've been using it mainly on investigations, which is where we find a large part of our practice is investigations as well. And we've found that using sentiment analysis can help us in various use cases that we traditionally wouldn't have surfaced those types of documents before. So an example has been a few years ago, we had an engagement involving a large super fund in Australia, which had some suspected issues of misconduct. But on reviewing the documents using sentiment analysis, we found a lot of communication involving senior people within the organization that really didn't meet the core values of the company. And as a result of that, there were a number of sanctions issued against employees, and then some of the senior leadership team were terminated. And that has really driven our adoption of sentiment analysis as well, because of that sort of history we've had with success.
How did using sentiment analysis help you get there?
Initially, we were actually looking for a different form of misconduct, and weren't really finding we didn't find any information to support the allegations. So we pivoted and deployed sentiment analysis, and within a very short sort of review period, within a few hours of one morning, we started to surface all these documents that just were really shocking what we were finding. And then deploying it more widely, we completely changed tact and showed the client what we were finding, and they were very surprised at what we were finding, and completely changed the scope of our engagement. And it grew to actually be a much bigger piece for us, and found, I think it was about 10 to 12 employees that were using language that was not consistent with their code of conduct and the company's values. And that was all discovered by the sentiment analysis we deployed.
Were you looking for communications where the content showed a high degree of excitement, or where the AI could identify sentence structure and patterns that were different from what was normally used, or what helped in there?
So we used a combination of alternating sentiment, so where conversations were going between positive and negative, and also I guess sentiment that was highly negative, which identified a lot of sort of sexist and vulgar communications.
One of the other areas you mentioned was the use of, I guess, reusable AI models that you can mix and match in various different ways. Tell me about that.
And we started deploying those types of models, or investigating the use of those models, particularly for our insolvency colleagues. As part of a formal appointment, we are required to conduct certain investigations into companies that we're appointed over, where there's, I guess, a situation of financial distress. And as part of those investigations, there's a half a dozen different lines of inquiry that we need to undertake to understand how that company got into the situation it's in. And it's through layering different models that we're able to identify that communication much more quickly than a traditional linear review. So we've had some success in reviewing documents both on a prioritized fashion and also from a coverage perspective, to identify documents relevant to those 6 lines of inquiry pretty quickly. And they
Go ahead.
And those lines of inquiry, some of them are similar, but some of them are very different. So the fact that the layering can identify groups of documents so quickly has really been able to be a point of differentiation that our insolvency colleagues can use when they're trying to win work themselves and differentiate us from our competitors.
When you layer together these different models, what sort of models are you layering together? What are they looking for?
We are layering some models that we've built, that we've taught the AI over time, and they're really looking at, I guess, various areas of a financial investigation. So the initial model would look at indicators of insolvency, so communications that indicate how a company has become in distress, and traditionally we've been looking for communications, particularly email communications, that exist between the company and its suppliers, where they're seeking payment is overdue, they're asking for extension of payment terms, and then some of the other models we're using are looking for what's referred to as a preferential payment, where a director might be trying to sort of siphon funds out of the company to related entities, or to friends of the business, so to speak. And a lot of the time when we're looking for those, we're looking for round number payments, also payments that have, communications and invoices that have gone out that are round numbers, or that are go out where there's no other communication regarding that particular supplier.
So you are building the models yourselves, right? You
Correct.
don't have a data science team, right?
Right.
How are you doing this?
The hard way. So yeah, we've obviously been running a number of car projects, and it's only been over the last, only more recently that we've been able to export those data models and save those data models and start the layering process. And it's with tools such as Reveal now, where it's made it much more accessible to us, and it makes it much easier for us to actually layer those data models, save those data models, and build an AI library. We see that in particular, from starting with the insolvency and the investigation matters that we see an opportunity for us to build our own intellectual property about the way we approach those matters and offer that to our clients. We're also excited that we're now seeing that there's an opportunity for artificial intelligence and machine learning to be made available for non-traditional discovery uses. So it's making that technology accessible to pretty much any client that needs to run or that could benefit from using that technology on an unstructured data source. And we're now investigating using AI with unstructured data, but then supporting it with structured data to bring it in.
How, I mean, I can envision, or, I think I have an idea of what the benefits to clients might be of the approach you are taking, but why don't you spell those out for me?
So in a given scenario, the first, and we have a number of proof of concepts on the go at the moment, and what we see as the benefit for the client is we can deploy an AI model that we've built that from the moment we deploy it starts uncovering documents of interest. So with little effort, we process the data, we get into the project, let's review a document. Here's 5 documents that are of interest. So in the past, that would have taken hours of time just to get to that point, hours of review, hours of effort, and we're seeing that happens from the moment we start the project. The second point is we're able to, I guess, demonstrate to our clients from the intellectual property that we've built that we have a good understanding of their issues, and they can get the benefit of all the hard work we've already done without having to pay all those upfront fees to get to that point, and save them a lot of money.
Where was I going to go with this? I had a question right in my. Okay. Thinking back to one of the comments you made, it sounds as if you are able to use these models in two very different ways. One of them is to help you find more like this, if you will. So you've built a model, it's looking for something, you deploy that model, and it brings back other things that are like that. So it sounds like you've been able to do that with them, right?
Correct.
It sounds as if you also are able, with the models you've been using, to have them help you find things that you might not have realized mattered. Tell me something I don't know.
That's right.
How does that matter? Go ahead.
And that is some of the engagements that we're running now with clients, coming particularly from their audit teams, and it's really about helping them, from an audit planning perspective, looking at compliance, but also just helping them identify issues that they're not aware of. So some of our engagements we have running now are really just, here's some data, tell us something about the data, give us some insight that we're not aware of. And sometimes that doesn't find anything, and the client is happy with that. It's almost like, whew, we're lucky. But others, we are more often than not finding something in there that in the data that they weren't aware of, that gives them not comfort, but it gives them a way to really make sure that they're identifying issues within the company, usually from a cultural perspective, but sometimes from a compliance or a risk perspective, that they can really demonstrate both internally and externally that they're dealing with issues, and not just waiting for things to arise.
You have deployed this type of approach in a number of areas that really go beyond traditional e-discovery from what you're saying. So corporate investigations, misconduct, bullying, white-collar crime, insolvency investigations, working with regulators. Bring it back for me to the beginning and tie it back to traditional electronic discovery and how it's helpful there.
Well, I mean, we couldn't live without it on traditional e-discovery. We use it on every matter, as I mentioned. We are increasingly using the data models to help us look at it from a quality control perspective. So, identifying privilege, identifying spam, identifying cross-contamination issues. We are building our own IP to help us deal with some of those quality control measures, and with our frequent deployment of TAR on, I guess, every matter that we do, we're also able to build. We have clients, particularly in the regulatory space, we have clients that unfortunately are receiving the same type of notices, daily, weekly, monthly, and we're able to build some models that help them accelerate that review. So the next time they get a model, it's not starting from scratch every time. There's been some value in taking that approach the first time, and next time they continue to realize that value every time they get one of those regulatory notices.
It sounds like you really have taken full advantage of the capabilities that AI, from TAR through sentiment analysis into AI models, and I'm sure beyond, has to offer. Any next steps, any future paths, just to close out here?
Well, I mean, AI and machine learning, I guess, is where we see the future. Looking to see how TAR-free, when it comes along, will play out. But we're very interested, still looking to extend, I guess, in the short term, the sentiment analysis and really leverage that more for fraud investigations. Then we're also looking at, as I say, more about building that intellectual property. So KordaMentha IP, about how we approach discovery or investigations or insolvency matters, and potentially marketing that to our clients.
Well, thank you, Grant. Grant Whiteley is a partner with KordaMentha. I am George Socha. This has been eDiscovery Leaders Live, hosted by ACEDS and sponsored by Reveal. Grant, Thanks so very much.
Thanks, George.